Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here. Your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. And Black Monday is officially over. And to the surprise of probably some, Mike LaFleur still has a job. There is a lot to take from the exit interviews from the New York Jets. Robert Saleh spoke. We had Joe Douglas speak. Woody Johnson has, of course, told the media that he's going to speak later to this team. And as of now, Mike LaFleur still has his job, which I think means he will have his job into next season. But there was comments from Saleh and the organization about his potential future, how the coaching staff could shake up in 2023, and some really good news about some of the players in the organization and, of course, the future of Zachary Wilson. There is a lot to digest, but let's start with the first big thing, which is that the staff so far is remaining intact. There are no plans at the right now. Michael LaFleur is still the OC. However, it does seem that the Jets have a plan, that they want to bring in a veteran presence to help with him in the locker room. I don't know if maybe Gary Kubiak, maybe a veteran offensive assistant, I believe, to help take some of the responsibilities off of LaFleur's plate, whether it's to have him focus on play calling, whether it's to focus on him developing with a quarterback. It does seem like the Jets understand that the offense has a major issue and that they are going to try to adjust it. But I do think there is a very important thing that a lot of people are not talking about in terms of this decision. Now, I know that there is a lot of Jet fans out there that want LaFleur gone, and there's still a chance that LaFleur or certain members of this coaching staff will be gone or will have different responsibilities next season. But I do think that this was an important Monday for the New York Jets. And personally, I believe LaFleur is going to be back for a couple of reasons. Most importantly is the fact that he made it through Monday. Why is this important? Because Woody Johnson has been an owner that gets a lot of grief from Jet fans. And look, Jet fans have every right to their opinion. Now, do I like the fact that Woody Johnson clearly cares about the team and clearly cares that he wants this team to be good? I do think that is a great thing where there's a lot of owners who could care less. But the biggest problem that has happened to the Jets has been when Woody Johnson has decided to make football decisions for this organization. And the biggest thing that I got out of yesterday is that Woody, at least at this moment, is trusting the football people to make football decisions. And I think that that is very important because Robert Saleh has said it will be up to the coaching staff. Joe Douglas has said a lot of these decisions will be left up to coach staff. And I get it. There's a lot of Jet fans that do not want to hear this. There's a lot of Jet fans out there that basically want to see blood, that there's a lot of Jet fans out there that want to see something major happen. And unfortunately, and it looks like some breaking news from Jeff Passan that Carlos Correa is going back to the Twins pending a physical. So we will see how that physical goes. 6 years, $200 million. But the thing I look at here is I'm glad that the football people are making the football decisions, which is important. Like, you want the people that are well-versed in the industry to make the decisions. However, it is clear that the Jets are going to look to add pieces to the staff, which I think is a good thing. And the more I thought about it, the more I was of the opinion, look, the Jets need to get a new OC in here. The problem was going to always be that it wouldn't be an ideal position to get a good offensive coordinator. I see people going, "Oh, Cliff Kingsbury got fired. The Jets could have brought him, and they could have brought in Frank Reich." Those guys are not going to come in here being a lame duck OC for one season. Pretty much everyone knows, and you can get the sense that Saleh knows, Joe Douglas knows, if this team is not in the playoffs next season, they will not have jobs. I'm pretty sure that basically the way it seems is that Woody said, okay, I'll let you do the decisions. I do see improvement on this team. There's some things I like, but here's the thing, guys. It's all on you. It's going to be a playoff mandate. If you do not make the postseason, That is it. There is a lot to get into. We will get into the Zach Wilson talk. And of course, your comments, as always, make sure you put it in the comments. Also, join us afterward as well. And if you're a Met fan, let me know in the comments if you want me to do a Correa live stream. My opinion on the Correa thing quickly is people are going to say this looks bad for the Mets. Look, if I'm the Mets, I don't think it looks bad. It shows that they wanted to be aggressive and they found a big medical issue. And it's kind of concerning for Correa if basically he has to get a 6-year contract and he's had not one but 2 teams back out because of a medical issue. And look, I'd rather have the Mets invest a ton of money in a player that was healthy as opposed to invested in a bad contract and in a player that's going to get hurt. So those are my thoughts really quick. But I do want to spin some positives going into 2023 for this Jet team before I get into Zach, before I get more into what Joe Douglas had to say, because Saleh said a lot, but a lot of it kind of echoes what he's been saying all season in the press conference, and Joe Douglas doesn't get to speak a lot. So I want to focus on Joe. I want to focus on Zach because they haven't spoken a lot in recent weeks. But there were some positives. The first looks like AVT and Breece Hall are going to be back at the start of training camp. Both are saying their rehab is going incredibly well. That is unbelievable news because to me, they're the 2 most important pieces on their offense next year. You have an all-pro level offensive lineman, and I'm curious to see how the Jets use AVT. Personally, I think he's better at guard, but who knows if the draft shakes out where they feel AVT would be a better tackle and they can get a better guard at better value in the draft. I don't have a problem with that. Breece Hall, obviously this team's best offensive weapon. Having him back healthy will be an incredible boost to this team. So it's great to see their recovery going well. And more importantly, one player that we talked a little bit about yesterday, who, again, because of how the season has gone, because of the previous 2 seasons and the injuries, I think a lot of Jet fans have basically moved on from this player. But Mekhi Becton, I will say this, like Mekhi Becton looks in unbelievable shape. And especially for someone that is going through a lower body injury, you saw it the first time with Mekhi where he had the lower body injury and gained a lot of weight. He looks to be in incredible shape. And look, I think you're going to see a motivated Mekhi Becton next year because he is basically fighting for his NFL life because he's going into his 4th season. And it's not just with the Jets, but if Mekhi Becton wants to get a decent second contract in the NFL, he's going to have to prove what he can do. And probably is going to have to play well next year, get a 1-year contract in another prove it kind of scenario, and basically show he can stay healthy for 2 years. So Mekhi Becton fighting for his NFL life. I do think that is encouraging to see him in great shape. He looked unbelievable in all the pictures. And look, he's a huge X factor for this team. One of the things I said coming into this season was Mekhi Becton and Zach Wilson were the 2 biggest X factors on this team. Because if they were not on the field and if they did not produce the way we thought they would produce, it would greatly impact the Jets season. And look what happened. Zach Wilson regressed. Mekhi Becton gets hurt in camp. The Jets are forced to bring in Dwayne Brown. The Jets are forced to elevate Max Mitchell early. And look, Mitchell looked good, but you saw it. That tackle depth got tested early. George Fant was never healthy for this team. Dwayne Brown, I give a lot of credit for the way he played this year, but it's clear he wasn't 100% healthy. And basically, once Mitchell got hurt at the right tackle position, this offensive line was toast. But look, I think that there was some very interesting comments from Joe Douglas yesterday. This was really the first time that Joe Douglas was able to address the media. And look, there were very tough questions directed at Joe Douglas. And there was a couple things that I thought was very interesting with his. Because Saleh was saying that they do want to bring Zach back. They want to bring in a veteran to compete with Zach. And Douglas even said, in regards to Zach Wilson, we've never been a team that has given up on talent early. Says the Jets are going to continue to work with that, Zach. However, in terms of the QB position, when asked what they were going to do, he says, we've got a lot of work to do. And if Zach Wilson was going to be the starter next year, he said, look, that's a Robert Saleh question. Doesn't say more than that. And basically, when asked if the Jets would consider trading for a quarterback, we're going to look at every avenue. So the thing I got from Joe Douglas is I do think Douglas basically understands that he's working with Saleh, but Douglas is going to do what he feels is best for this team. I think that this team basically understands that, look, there's a couple of different avenues they can go down. Now, one avenue that has to be explored is basically Zach Wilson is not this team star next year. Like, you can have Zach on the roster, but there has to be serious talks because I know that the comments he made after New England pissed a lot of people off. The big question to me is Zach Wilson going to be a problem in this locker room? From all indications, he's a good kid. He seems to get along with his teammates. He is well documented as an incredibly hard worker. But because he even made the comment yesterday, if there's a variance, he says, I'm going to give them hell, basically. You do wonder if that's going to cause a problem in the locker room. The Jets have to have that serious conversation because I get the Jets don't want to just give away Wilson. I understand that you want to maximize the value. And in some regards, holding on to Wilson wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, especially if you're trying to get value. Right now, Wilson doesn't have value because there's going to be a free agency period where teams can get quarterbacks in the free agent market. There's the draft coming up. They can get them in the draft. But you saw it a bit during this season. Quarterback values during the season go up. If there's major injuries, if quarterbacks get hurt, if teams feel they're on the bubble, that would raise Zach's value, I believe, midseason. I think that's what the Jets are kind of planning on, is if they're already kind of thinking moving on, at least keep him on the roster, maybe try to get an early day 3 pick next season. But I do think Douglas is going to explore all avenues. I do think that what they do too, and I've been saying this last couple of weeks, is also going to be very telling about how they really truly view Zach Wilson. If they really do believe what they are saying, that they are fully committed to Zach Wilson, that Zach Wilson is going to be someone that they really believe is salvageable, that they're going to get basically a 1 or 2 year stopgap. And who is that? That's Jimmy G. If the Jets are all in on Jimmy G and push for Jimmy G, I think it tells you two things. One, they feel they can win with Jimmy G now, but it also tells you that they still think Zach Wilson could be a long-term solution. Now, if they go after a big fish like a Carr, I think that changes the dynamic because you're basically bringing someone in for 3 or 4 seasons. And I also wouldn't rule anything off the table. I think the big star that every Jet fan would dream of would be Lamar Jackson. Now, Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't touch. I would not look at Aaron Rodgers. Lamar Jackson's different. I understand some people are concerned about his durability, but if I'm the Jets and I could, even if I have to pay a couple first-round picks to get Lamar Jackson, someone that's in their prime, an MVP candidate, like I would have to do it. And I do think that there is some connection because Douglas has worked with the Ravens. I do wonder if he's talking to them in private, but I just have this feeling that the Jets are going to make a move at the quarterback position. And depending on the type of move they make, it tells you how they view Zach. If they go for more of a Garoppolo stopgap year, they still are showing you that they think they can still develop Zach in some capacity, where if they basically go out and get one of these big fish, they're basically telling you that not only do they not believe in Zach, but they're basically moving on from Zach. So, and I mean, look, Zach was asked about being the quarterback position. Look, I thought Zach handled the media very well yesterday. I think that I do think that he has shown maturity over the past couple of weeks. I think he has handled this about as well as you possibly can. But I get it. I do think that there's a portion of this fan base that will never trust Zach again, and I completely get it. But I also think that maybe it's best for both parties to maybe split eventually. I'm curious to see what Zach Wilson does. Let me put it this way. I would not be shocked if Zach Wilson asked for a trade this offseason. I mean, I know Elijah Moore asked, but I would not be shocked if Zach Wilson basically says, look, I don't think I can win here. Even though I love this staff, even though I love this team, if I go out there in my first game back and I sail a pass, I'm going to get booed mercilessly. Like, I basically have to be unbelievable. Like, Zach can't even be average anymore in the eyes of this fan base. Like, Zach has to be special. Zach has to justify basically being the number 2 pick, but also justify costing this team basically seemingly a chance of the postseason. Because if Zach was average, heck, if Zach wasn't even average, if Zach was in the 20 or 21st quarterback in the NFL, the Jets are in the playoffs instead of being 31st, 32nd, or 33 in pretty much every statistic. If he's like 21st quarterback, the Jets are in the playoffs. If he doesn't play some of the worst quarterback games we've ever seen, Jets are in the playoffs. Basically, the Jets had to go to Mike White and Joe Flacco down the stretch. Like, they didn't even want to put Zach back out there, which I think is very telling. But again, guys, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Also, on my YouTube page, if you're joining us during the video, after the video, I'm going to do a lot of off-season content. But look, this is also your channel too. You have a voice, and I really want to, make this content that you want to see. So I have a poll up right now. What Jets video do you want to see this week? Do you want a 3-round mock draft, my first one of the season? Do you want Here or Gone, a fun game where I go through a bunch of Jets that are on the block, whether it's through cap casualties or potential free agents, and I tell you if I think they'll be here or gone in 2023, the top 5 cap casualties, and right now winning the top 5 trade candidates. And a little bit of a background on the candidates. When I'm talking about that, I should have been a little bit more specific. I apologize, but trade candidates from the Jets, like pieces that the Jets could trade from their roster, not potentially people that they could bring in. So let me just make sure I put that out there just to give you a little bit more clarification, but make sure you go and join us there. And also give us a like on Twitter, give us a subscribe using the handle at Rich Sports Talk. Frank Acosella, I believe I'm saying that right. I want Garoppolo. Look, I get the fan base wanting Garoppolo. I think Garoppolo, the only concern I have is the injuries. Like, Garoppolo is one of those players that it almost feels like you want him to get injured early or in mid-season because, like, right now, this seems to be a big problem with the 49ers is he's hurt at the wrong time. Do we add Gary Kubiak, Brian Griese to our coaching staff? Kubiak would be interesting. Again, he's retired. I think that would be their first call. Again, the respect that they have for Gary Kubiak. It depends on how much Gary Kubiak wants to get back in. Brian Griese, I wouldn't hate either. Brian Griese, good offensive mind as well, former quarterback. I mean, I would look at both. Let's see. We learn to get Aaron Rodgers. I'm not exactly sure what they did. If we continue with Zach, they will all be fired next year. Look, I don't think they're going to. If they continue with Zach, it will be as a backup role, and hopefully he gets an opportunity later in the season if the starter gets hurt that he can come in and basically produce. So they're not going to. Let's put it this way: they are not going to start the season with Zach Wilson under center. They're not. Now, could he be on the roster and be a developmental quarterback? Sure. But I do not see that. Pretty sure he meant he's going to work hard to dethrone the veteran, not cause the issues. No, I get that, sure. Like, that's what I was trying to mean. But the thing is, like, the staff has to wonder his relationship. Like, Saleh's in that locker room. Saleh's in there. And look, I still feel the Jets have told us that they don't trust Zach. I mean, they didn't dress Zach for games. They only put him in there basically in the last game in the worst case scenario. But all you need to know, like, if this organization and this coaching staff truly believed in Zach and basically said that no matter what, we are going down the Zach Wilson ship, they would not bench him twice, and they wouldn't bench him for a practice squad player in prime time. And that's another reason why I do think Zach may request a trade out of here anyways, because he could go to the front office and be like, you're telling me you want to do what's best for me, but you brought me back before I was probably ready to go again. and you embarrassed me on national television in front of the nation and basically humiliated me. So there's a lot to take in there. And Jay Klein brings up a good point. Look, Zach's gonna have some value. Like we always say, like, there's no way, but how many first round picks get second, third chances? I mean, there's a reason you're a first round pick. It's because you have talent that evaluators believe you have head and shoulders above everyone else. Someone in this league will fall in love with Zach, or someone believes that they can salvage Zach, or someone will look at Zach and go, we'll see what the Jets did, and Geno Smith now is a successful quarterback. Like, they'll believe, oh, it's on the Jets. I could be the one to figure it out. I do think someone will take a shot. And look, when I say take a shot, they're not just going to immediately take Zach Wilson and put him in a starting role with that organization. They're going to look at it and say, we could rebuild him potentially. Let's see. Zach has to be a top 10 to 12 quarterback this year to sell me this year. Look, Jake, I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility. Like, look, Zach could play better, but if Zach's not playing like an elite quarterback, I don't think fans will trust him ever again. Yeah, like they really need a new quarterback. I've been here, man. I've been here, Momo. Like, I was doing it. I was after the Dolphins game. I was here yesterday. I've been doing a lot more videos. So Tierney says Jets coaching staff ruined Zach. I disagree. Look, I don't love Brandon Tierney's quotes this week. Personally, I think he's all over the place. Do I think that this coaching staff hurt Zach's development in a sense? Yes. Do I think in retrospect they should have brought a veteran? Yes. But here's the thing. Every quarterback's going to get thrown in there. People are saying, like, oh, it's not fair that Zach got thrown without a veteran. Well, Mac Jones got thrown in there. Justin Fields got thrown in there. Heck, David Mills got thrown in there. Like, this is the new NFL. The new NFL is these kids start early. And the reason they start early is for two reasons. Number one, you want to develop as quick as possible to take the most advantage of their rookie contracts. And number two, you want to get a decision on them quick. And like I've said this entire season, all along, this whole season was about finding out if Zach Wilson was the answer. And we got the answer. The worst thing that could have happened is the Jets were sitting here and were like, Zach looked okay. Zach, there were moments. Zach's showing some potentials. And this is the thing I hate. And I do think this is a lazy take, especially nationally, because the Jets have had the failures with the quarterback. And like, oh, the Jets failed the quarterback. Oh, the Jets failed the quarterback. Oh, the Jets. And look, do I think if they had an offensive coach, they could have maybe developed Zach a little bit better? Probably. But I've also been pounding the table and saying no organization did more for their second-year quarterback than the New York Jets did. Like, seriously, go around the league. I've said this over and over again. I sound like a broken record, but the Jets were the only organization who had a second-year quarterback, have the same head coach, the same offensive coordinator, and also the same GM in their second year. Everyone else had at least one or two, sometimes even three changes. And the Jets also invested a lot. They invested in free agency. They rebuilt the whole tight end room. They drafted Breece Hall. They drafted Garrett Wilson. They drafted Max Mitchell. They drafted Jeremy Ruckert. Like, they were all in on offense. They did more. Like, Justin Fields, there's a reason the Bears have the worst record in football. It's because the Bears got a defensive head coach, and the Bears decided we're going to draft our first two picks to be defense, despite the fact Justin Fields had no offensive line and no weapons. Jacksonville has been a nice, great story this year and a great turnaround, but they also had a new head coach. They had to go out and spend a ton in free agency. And their first overall pick was on Trayvon Walker. And I was like, look, I get how good Trayvon Walker is. And he's been a good NFL player. I wouldn't say he was worth the number one pick. I still think Hutchinson was the best pick at number one. But if you weren't going to take Hutchinson, so get an offensive lineman, protect this franchise quarterback. Mac Jones is a defensive coordinator calling his plays. Like, seriously, if it wasn't for Bill Belichick, if any other team did that, their head coach would be blistered and basically be told that they should be fired today. Like, the Jets did more for Zach Wilson than any other organization. If anyone but Zach ruined himself, it was the GM pairing him with inexperienced coaches with no bridge quarterback and letting him learn practice or throwing him into the fire. Look, I get the inexperienced coaches, but every time you get a new quarterback, you're going to have inexperienced coaches. And the biggest thing I still take out of it too was this is still a team that brought a lot of pieces. They did eventually bring in Joe Flacco. Now, I look back at it, there really wasn't a great bridge option for that first year for Zach. Now, everyone's saying in hindsight, you should have brought in the bridge, but these young quarterbacks, they play early. Trevor Lawrence played early before he probably should have. All these quarterbacks, because front office needs to get an answer. I guess is Beningo for Becton, Momo? Just let me know. I saw the Becton. Look, Becton's a good kid. Like, people are like saying, oh, you hate Becton. No, I love Becton. I think Becton's an unbelievable kid. I just say, like, look, I can't trust the kid. There's a difference. Like, when you have gone through 2 seasons where you've played 1 game, I can't rely on you. And even if he comes back and has a great season next year, there's still going to be a thought in the back of your mind, okay, was this a 1-year aberration or is this who he can potentially be? Because usually when people get hurt in the NFL early in their career, they don't all of a sudden magically find a magic elixir and they don't get hurt. Becton though does look a lot better though. Like, there were still pictures last offseason where he looked well overweight. Look, I love Beningo, but I think Beningo's points, like, I almost feel like half his points are just to get clicks, basically. What's up, Gang Green? Good to have you back. Always love the comments in here. One week, Joe B was saying how great the defense was. Then he's telling me tell me what's so great about. Yeah, he's all over the place. I don't think that they're consistent, and I get it. Part of it is they want to get clicks. Part of it's they want to get the views. I understand that. Look, I'll tell you how it is. Like that, I feel like I'm pretty consistent with my takes. Of course, when new information is given to me, I can change my opinion over time, but I don't change it on like a week-to-week basis. Like, look, I was a big Zach Wilson supporter on this channel, but as the time went on, it got to the point where, look, I had too much information to basically keep defending Zach. Like, I get it. Did Zach have the ideal situation to develop? No. But Justin Fields doesn't have the ideal situation to develop. Mac Jones doesn't have the ideal. The only one that seemingly does might be Trevor Lawrence. It's because he's got a Super Bowl head coach. But his first year, Urban Meyer almost ruined him, for God's sakes. So let's see. I wouldn't, because again, I still think there's issues with Fields. I'm fast to see what the Bears do. I am really fascinated to see what the Bears do, because the Bears, to me, could do a bunch of things, but I almost feel like they're going to do the wrong decision. Like, how much do you want to bet? They could restart over with a new quarterback and trade Justin Fields and get good draft compensation. They could trade that first pick and get a bunch of picks to build the dilapidated roster around Justin Fields. Why do I get this feeling, and I'm going to say this now, today, on January 10th, why do I get the feeling that the Bears are somehow going to screw this up? Like, I just could see them not making a trade, not doing anything of the offense. I seriously, guys, I could see him drafting Jalen Carter or Willie Anderson, the two best defensive prospects in this draft. Like, because the Bears are the Bears. Like, they're so defensive minded. They so love their defense. They still will not shut up about the 1985 defense. Like, I will not be shocked if we get reports that they got multiple first-round picks offered for that first pick, and they go with a defensive player. I seriously, really seriously could see that happening. Like, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. And guys, make sure to smash that like button, give us a subscribe. Uh, love Joe B. He's basically just a rant. Yeah, I think I just think he's he like, and I love the passion he brings, but uh, I just think his takes are all over the place. Uh, Look at CJ Mosley's contract and McCagnon and everyone else. Jody signs, stark difference. Yeah, the contract's actually not terrible, and the Jets can get out of it. I mean, that's the thing. They still have to deal with the goddamn CJ Mosley contract from McCagnon. Zach's competition was not strong at BYU. Yeah, but like the thing though is, I think the Jets fell in love with the upside, and I still think Zach Wilson had the most upside of any of those quarterbacks outside Trevor Lawrence. And look, for everyone saying the Jets made a huge mistake, uh, can we just admit to, like, everyone's making like, oh, the Jets screw this up. It's all the Jets. The Jets are idiots. Let's see. Outside of Trevor Lawrence, who's been great in that draft class, Mac Jones looks average. And if New England has the option, they'll try to upgrade from him. Justin Fields, I mean, today we're already getting some things like, don't run out the Bears taking a quarterback. They could. And Trey Lance has been in witness protection program for 3 years. Like, he never plays. And he's probably going to get pushed from an undrafted, not non-drafted, Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, look, I don't think the Jets would trade up with the Bears. Look, if there's any team that's going to trade up, they're going to trade up for a quarterback at number 1 to jump in front of Houston. Look, I also wouldn't be shocked too. Houston's such a mess. Houston has the 2 and the 12 pick. Like, if I'm Chicago, I'd be like, hey, what do you want for 2 and 12 and maybe an additional third, like a late pick? They trade back. Then another team could want a quarterback, could trade up for number 2. I mean, there's a lot of options up there. I mean, Indianapolis is at 4. Does Jim Irsay get crazy and trade up for number 1? I mean, you have Detroit at 6. I think they like Jared Goff, but don't forget they got the 6th pick, the 18th pick. They got a bunch of picks. Could they move up? I mean, it'll be very interesting. And I just get the feeling Fields is not going anywhere. Like, if you had to ask me today, I don't think Justin Fields is going anywhere. I really don't. Let's see what else in here. Joe D doesn't overpay for top tier free agents. Doesn't mean he never overpays. Look at the tight end contracts and way. Look, I don't think yeah, the Uzama contract was a bit high, but it's not like the worst contract. Like, people are like, oh my God, these contracts. CJ Mosley is the example of a terrible contract where you not only overpaid, but you well overpaid above the market and you gave highly guaranteed money. I mean, the Jets front load a lot of these contracts to the point where, like, Carl Lawson and Corey Davis are great examples. The Jets can basically cut them and save a bunch of money and this offseason. So, like, I just look at, like, the contract. I'm just bringing up the contract right now. So, yeah, the Conklin contract is basically an $8 million hit. A little bit high, but again, I thought it was really good this year. Uzama's a bit high. Let me just I'm just seeing what the Whitehead. Yeah, Whitehead 10 million. He's probably more like an $8 million player, but look, I don't think it's the worst contract for safety. I mean, they're not paying him like $15-16 million. I mean, it's a little bit high, but I don't think it's a little bit. I haven't even mentioned Minshew today. Come on, Momo. I mean, seriously, like, I haven't even mentioned that. The staff right now is intact, and I think you bring up a good point. And I mean, I'm glad you brought this up. Look, I think LaFleur's staying because I would be shocked if he gets fired now. Because look, if LaFleur was going to get fired, it would have been on Monday for a couple of reasons. Number one, it would have shown that the Jets had taken immediate action. Number two, I think Woody Johnson is the type of owner, like, if he's going to make a move, he wants to make headlines. And when do you make headlines with a coaching change? You make it on Black Monday. You make it when everyone in the football world is looking and seeing who is losing their job. And if Woody wanted to make a point and show that he's the one making the decisions, that he is not accepting this nonsense, I believe LaFleur would have been gone. I think that their goal is to try to bring in a veteran play caller like a Kubiak. They're trying to bring in another veteran to this offensive staff to add to LaFleur. And look, I think what Joe D and Robert Saleh convinced him was, look, we know we basically have to get to the playoffs this year. We feel like this is the best staff to do it. And the other thing too is, look, I bet they pointed this out. Who are we getting? If we fire LaFleur, who's going to want to come to this OC position where they might have to try to salvage Zach Wilson? They might have to get with a new quarterback. And oh, by the way, if we don't make the playoffs, we're getting fired. Yeah, Mosley's contract, I do think will be potentially redone. So I know they already did. I don't know. I'm of the opinion, like, let's put it this way. I don't think Mosley should have been a Pro Bowler. Like, I've been on the channel saying, I don't know how the hell he made the Pro Bowl. The Jets could technically get out of the contract with a $14 million dead cap, but they would save $51 million over the next couple of years. So if they are able to cut bait with him this offseason, they would save, next year would be minimal. They would only save, I think, $3 million. But the following season, they would save, it's basically long-term, like $7 million. Like, they'd get out of it for 26, for 25. But look, if I would try to redo the Mosley deal. It's just tough, like, to pay a linebacker that much money. And look, Mosley's a good player, but again, he's terrible in pass coverage. I mean, he's become a liability out there times. And look, I hate to say this, but like, when he was out of the play, when Sherwood stepped in for the few snaps that they were in there, it wasn't like the year before where Mosley wasn't out there and the defense fell apart. Mosley came out a couple times this year, and you barely noticed that, if anything, if he was out of the game, which is not exactly great when you're paying him that much money. Yeah, if I was the Texans, but I don't even know who's going to be there. Like Caserio, like, again, how does Caserio get to keep his freaking job? Like Caserio, like this is the one other lazy nerve too. Like, people say how dysfunctional the Jets are, how the Jets are messed. Like, the Jets at least have structure. The Jets at least have some continuity. I mean, basically, the Texans just fired 2 head coaches back to back after one season. Like, they are just an absolute mess. Like, they are a joke of a franchise. Let's see. Corey Davis, I think, is going to get cut. Again, I'm going to do episodes about this later, this offseason, like the potential cap casualties. And I also think that Carl Lawson and Corey Davis will be back, but in a unique way. And I'll get into that more in future episodes, because I do think that there is an avenue to bring both back. I know a lot of Jet fans could care less about Corey Davis, but the thing, though, is we're not sure about Elijah Moore's future. We're not sure about what's going on with Denzel Mims. I mean, there's a lot of different things that happen. Audition, best guess, what will the QB room looks like next year? To be honest, I don't know. I think the Jets would like to bring back Mike White. I think Zach Wilson's going to be in the quarterback room to at least start training camp. I think the Jets would like to bring back Mike White, but again, it depends on what they do with the quarterback position. If they bring in a big gun like Lamar Jackson or Derek Carr, there's no reason to have a Mike White. But if they bring in like a Jimmy G who's often hurt, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And the other thing with Mike White is I do think his injuries and his performance over the end of the season hurt his value. But is there a team out there that's going to look at Mike White and say he can start the season for us while we nurture a rookie quarterback? For example, like if you're Chicago and you understand that Justin Fields has now got a record of being hurt, do you invest highly in Mike White, especially because you got $100 million in cap space and you can spend a little bit extra on a backup quarterback to pick up if Fields gets hurt? Another team too, like I'd keep an eye on the Texans for Mike White. Could the Texans look at it and go, we don't want to throw Bryce Young or whoever our young quarterback is early. We're going to be a terrible team. Let's at least throw Mike White out there for 3 or 4 starts until this quarterback is ready. I mean, that could be a situation too. Like, could Arizona be a team? I mean, Arizona, it depends on who the new OC, new head coach is, but Could they bring him in understanding, look, Kyler Murray's probably not going to be ready to go week 1? Could Indianapolis bring in Mike White? I mean, there's some teams like that could look at Mike White and go, okay, he's a good backup. If we need a spot star for a couple games, we can get through it with him. So I'll be curious to see what the market is. But look, I don't think Zach is going anywhere. I don't think he's going anywhere. How much do you give Lazard to maybe be our number 2? Do you like that idea? Look, I think if a lot depends on Rodgers. One receiver I really do like and I think would fit well in the system, again, if he leaves, and this is the hard thing about doing free agency, and this is why I tend to do free agency close to the period because, I mean, I think a great example is Dalton Schultz. Like, we all felt Dalton Schultz was going to be a tight end for the Jets last year for free agency, and then they franchise tag him. So I would say one player I would really keep an eye on if I'm the Jets would be Mecole Hardman from the Chiefs, because he's going to be 25. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, unrestricted free agent. And look, the Chiefs, I don't know if they'll bring him back. Again, they have a lot of good young receivers. They've already traded for Kadarius Toney. They have that contract, which is a first-round contract on their books. They got Kelsey. I mean, they got a lot of players that they have to pay. And I think Hardman is just a really explosive player. And he kind of fits the free agent that Joe Douglas like. What kind of free agent does Joe Douglas like? He doesn't usually like to get the late 20s, 30-year-old free agent. He likes to target the mid-20s guy who they feel is coming into their prime or still ascending. Like, that was the thought with Corey Davis. That was the thought with Carl Lawson. So Hardman, to me, fits that bill a little bit better. And he is an incredibly explosive player and a big yak guy, which I think is something they would really like. Poyer will be available. I can see him as a stopgap free safety. He's 31, could still play. The only thing I worry about with Poyer, though, is being at 31, especially a position where you need speed, is this the year they fall off? Because we see certain players, like, they hit a certain mark and they fall off. So that's why being concerned. I think that they're going to look to address free safety in the draft. This is a good one. I was actually going to get to this because Quincy Williams was interviewed yesterday, was wearing a Williams brother t-shirt, and Quinnen Williams was asked about the podium, and also Joe Douglas. And Joe Douglas, of course, said he's never going to use the jet for life again because that just got him in trouble. Look, I think Quinnen Williams is going to stay. I think the Jets are eventually going to pay Quinnen Williams, and I know people are going to freak out when he doesn't show up to voluntary workouts, but again, those are kind of BS anyways, especially if you're a veteran in this league. I would say this: if I'm the Jets and I have to pay extra for Quincy Williams to keep Quinnen here, I do think that's a big thing. Like, I think Quincy's a good player. Is he great? No, but is he a solid linebacker? Does he have some mistakes that pull your hair out? Sure. Does he play fast and physical? Absolutely. And if it keeps Quinnen Williams here, who's the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL, if that's an extra carrot or an extra incentive for Quinnen that they're taking care of his brother, I bring him back. This is also interesting too that Momo brings up is DeAndre Hopkins, because I am fascinated to see what happens with Hopkins this offseason, because I think he will want out of Arizona. I think that the problem with him is he's got such a huge contract. If he's willing to rework it, great. But it also depends on who the quarterback is here. But if you were to ask me if I could trade, like, for example, if Elijah Moore you feel is still being a bit disruptive, or you're not really sure about Elijah Moore, I wouldn't mind trading like Elijah Moore and a pick for DeAndre Hopkins and having him with Garrett Wilson. And plus, having that kind of player with Garrett Wilson, I think will only help his development. So, BK, do you think the Jets tag anyone? I'd say that's a good one. And Jets gang, again, thanks for this. He will take the hometown discount. I think that's really great news, and that's something I did miss. So thank you for bringing that up. I don't think they do because I'm trying to think for the potential free agents because the Jets, the franchise tag is basically you're going to pay someone a top five salary at that position. In the unrestricted free agents, there isn't anyone that really would fit or someone that you tag and try to trade. I'm just going through in my head who they could tag. I mean, you're not. I don't think they're going to tag anyone. And plus, uh, the tag too. Like there isn't like a receiver that they could tag. There isn't a tight end or offensive lineman that you would tag. Like I don't think they use a tag on anyone. I mean, Quinnen Williams, like it's not the tag. It's just working on the extension for him. So I don't think that he will get a tag as well. Easier to shore up the defense and free agency and draft for the offense. The wide receiver class seems very light this year out of the top two rounds. And the Jets will need to address wide receiver this year. I don't see Davis back. Dave the Dude, I don't think it's not as good as last year's wide receiver class, but there's always good wide receivers. I would say, that's a good one. I'm trying to just think in my head really quickly. Yeah, like the free agency, like that's why I think you can get McCole Hardman. But the problem with the wide receivers, and one of the reasons I still think you'll see the Jets be aggressive in the draft, though, is because the receivers have become the new quarterbacks. Like McCole Hardman, like, is it out of the question he could get 13, $14 million a year? I wouldn't personally think he's worth that, but that's the way the wide receiver market is right now. The wide receiver market is exploding. And in some ways, is it better just to draft a wide receiver every year and hope they're great and not have to pay them for 3 or 4 years? Because the one great thing about Garrett Wilson right now, the Jets don't have to pay him. They don't have to pay Elijah Moore. They don't have to pay them. But you look around the league and what these wide receivers are making now, it goes quarterback and then goes wide receiver. And the thing I would be curious about is, do I think that the Jets look on the free agent market? They can get the right deal. I think they will do it. But I also don't throw out that they will draft a receiver in the draft because you look at the history. Joe Douglas, like he has a pattern. First round usually gets someone that addresses the trenches, whether it's Mackay, AVT, Jermaine Johnson. Second round, what's been their calling card? Get the best playmaker that didn't go in first round to get the most value. They had a first round grade on Elijah Moore. They got him in the second round. They had a first round grade on Breece Hall. They went up and got him in the second round. Denzel Mims. They didn't love him. They traded back later in the second round, was still there, and still took a shot on him. So Joe Douglas has shown like they're going to draft receivers. They are going to draft playmakers in the second round. And ideally, you see playmakers drop in the second round. It's a bit of a game because you know there's going to be tackles. You know there's going to be quarterbacks selected. And because of that, that pushes everyone else down the board. That pushes what could have been the number 20th player on your board into the 35th or 36th pick. And we saw it last year. We saw it the year before. We see it every single year. Yeah, Hardman does have a problem staying healthy. We'll see. I can answer this in 2 ways. The starter out of camp, no. Eventual star if Mackay gets hurt, yes. And look, Max Mitchell, of course, had the blood issue. It seems like that's been resolved. Hopefully that is an answer result because I really like Max Mitchell. I mean, I don't think Max Mitchell gets enough praise. And again, I know we talked a lot about this rookie class, and obviously Garrett and Sauce are going to get the headlines. Obviously Breece Hall, obviously Jermaine, even to an extent, Jeremy Rucker because he's the hometown kid, Michael Clemens just because of the personality. But Max Mitchell, like, could be probably the steal of that draft for the Jets just because of where they got him. And he showed, like, they basically were treating last year as a redshirt year for him and hoping he could be a starter this year. And he showed last year he can be a starting right tackle. Do you know how hard it is to find a starting offensive lineman in the first 2 days of the draft, and the Jets potentially found someone on day 3? So I think Mitchell will eventually be starting. And at the very least, he's a high-end rotational backup. And look, the Jets saw last year, you need tackle depth. Is Becton an automatic star? That's a good question, Melvin. And again, Melvin, always love the Jets comments. You always have great ones, and always appreciate you watching. I think he gets a bit of a nod because again, he has more upside physically than Mitchell. And don't forget too, the contract plays a bit into this. But I also think this coaching staff's at the point now where they know they have to win. Like, look, if Becton struggles in camp and Mitchell's playing well, I wouldn't be shocked if maybe they start Mitchell over Becton in the season. I mean, the Jets have to win. Like, if this was the first year for Saleh and that they're trying to develop a little bit more, then maybe they go to Becton over Mitchell. But look, the Jets know they have to make the playoffs. And if Robert Saleh is a player's coach and he believes in his players, but he also believes in job security. And if he believes Max Mitchell gives him the best opportunity to win at right tackle than Mekhi Becton, they're going to do that. I do not believe this Dave the Dude will be the left tackle one this year. Look, he'll be the right tackle. They've already hinted he's going to stay at right tackle. I believe the left tackle is on the Jets roster. I think ideally, even though I know Jet fans wouldn't love the cap hit, Dwayne Brown comes back and is basically a high-end backup at the left tackle, or at least eases the new left tackle in. I think the Jets use their first-round pick on a left tackle because there are a bunch of good tackles in this draft. And even though there's a couple teams in front of the Jets that need offensive linemen, there are still some there should at least be a tackle the Jets could grab. I mean, look, the three big ones that come to mind, Peter Skoronski from Northwestern. I don't think he'll be on the board because he's the best tackle. Paris Johnson Jr., I really like. I think there's a good chance he is on the board. And Broderick Jones, probably a little bit higher than he should be at 13. But I also wouldn't rule out the Jets making a trade. Like if the Jets, Joe Douglas has been aggressive in these drafts. If there's an offensive tackle he believes is a franchise left tackle, do not be shocked if the Jets go up and get him. And this is an interesting point too. Could they move Becton to guard? I doubt it because Becton's never been a guard in his life before. It's an interesting possibility. I mean, one thing I would also consider too is AVT is basically your wild card because I do think he could be an all-pro guard, but if he's also a really good tackle. That's the thing too. If you can't rule anything out with the Jets. Like if the Jets go into this draft process and they come out and go, there's some good tackle prospects, but we feel Elijah Vera Tucker would be better at left tackle than anyone, then I say put Elijah Vera Tucker at your left tackle. If you have to move back inside a guard, I think you do, but I think they're going to try him at tackle. And the thing is, you can get good guards later in the first round and the second round. Maybe it's a situation where the Jets go, okay, we don't love the tackles, but we really like the guards. And instead of picking a tackle at 13 and reaching for a tackle at 13, maybe we can trade back. Maybe like an Osiris Torrance, the guard from Florida. Florida's there. Like if we trade back, like maybe we could get him in the 20s while also picking up additional pick. Like these are games that the Jets and this front office has to play. And we're going to break it down this offseason. I do a ton of draft content. If you love draft content, you love the New York Jets and New York Jets draft content, make sure you follow me. I do 3-round mock drafts. And once free agency is over, I do full 7-round mock drafts for the New York Jets. Let's see. Brown, I don't think is done. We'll see. I think he's still a good backup. Like he wasn't healthy this year either. I don't hate it. I mean, look, if he thinks it's going to help in motivation, like it's clear they have a message. And look, I think it shows that they understand that the way the season didn't end well. Like I don't have a problem with the finished t-shirts. I have more of a problem with the whole problem with the Mike White t-shirts. I don't think you can tell players what to wear, but I do think it hurt this team a bit where, again, I know that they love Mike White, and I know Mike White is well respected in this locker room, but the fact they were all wearing the t-shirts right after Wilson was humiliated and benched, I think was a bad look. And I get that these quarterbacks have to face their own scrutiny, but I just feel like that was just another thing against Zach and another thing for this fan base Like, if you really truly believed in Zach, and this is one of the reasons I think they don't believe in Zach, is like if they truly believe in that, I think they wouldn't nip down the butt. I think they would have, because you're basically letting the players tell the fan base, we don't believe in this franchise quarterback. And if the players don't believe in that quarterback, why should the fans that invest God knows how much money, time, interest, passion in this team also invest in that quarterback? There is one good left tackle in this draft. Okay, Dave the Dude, would love to hear this. Skoronski will kick inside. Broderick Jones is a right tackle in the NFL. Johnson is the only one. Look, Johnson also, too, don't forget, was the number one offensive line prospect coming out. Skoronski, I think, could play outside. He seems like a better player inside. I agree with that. Yeah, the thing I worry about with Jones is he kind of reminds me a lot of Evan Neal and the Georgia Alabama offensive lineman. Like, you almost feel like once they get to the NFL, there's not a lot of ascension. I think Broderick Jones doesn't have the great footwork. He almost feels like, to me, like I said, like Evan Neal. Like, Evan Neal coming in could play left, but you felt better at right. Now, in 2 or 3 years, could they make the switch to left tackle? I think that could be a possibility, but again, I don't necessarily love the footwork there. I think Kubiak will be the first person they call. It will be interesting. I'm dying to see who they bring in, but I do think it's someone that will have ties to the Shanahan system. Yeah, they did in the preseason, but again, it's mid-season. You know, you're starting a backup quarterback. So I just think it wasn't the best look, because again, it sends a message to this fan base, right or wrong, that this team believes more in Mike White than they do in Zach Wilson. And maybe they did, but I felt like that's something that they should have controlled a little bit better. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. Jones is not a great pass blocker. Yeah, Jones does struggle a bit. Again, like, a lot of it comes down to the footwork. I think you can get away with him at the right tackle. I really think he's a lot like Evan Neal. Bigger tackle. I mean, he's 315 pounds about. And it's hard, too, when this is the hard thing with Georgia and Alabama, which is, I mean, the skill positions is one thing. Like, wide receiver, you can clearly tell, like, wow, that's something different, like with Jamison Williams, Alabama. But especially the offensive lineman, you always wonder, is it the lineman really that great, or is it a product of having 4 or 5-star offensive linemen, having 5-star receivers so the quarterback can get the ball out quick? Because, look, I think Neal was a solid tackle for the Giants this year, but at the 7th pick, you're kind of like expecting a little bit more. I mean, Andrew Thomas has been a great find for them, but even in the Jets draft, like with Mackay, I think Wirfs has been a home run. But even the player that I'm trying to remember, the one that went to the Browns, the name's escaping me. Like, I think he's been solid, but he hasn't been great in the NFL. I mean, it's real hit or miss with some of these tackles. I love you, Melvin. Oh my God. There's a lot of punters. I think if the Jets go punter, it's got to be free agency. Look, I don't think Man should be back on this team. I really don't. Just send me some sort of message though. Dwayne Brown was never injured until he joined the Jets. He was injured, but he played through it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, he was. Don't forget too. Like, we were like, oh, he's never injured before. Well, I mean, the other thing too is he's 37. He's older. I mean, your body breaks down at that age. So I don't get on him for, breaking down. Look, he played through it. I mean, he played the entire season. Basically, they sat him out week 18. So I got to give Dwayne Brown a lot of credit. Yeah, thank Jedrick Willis. I knew it was I forgot the first name. I knew the last name. So Paris Johnson is this year's Charles Cross. Day one starter left tackle, the only one. Look, and if I'm the Jets and you truly believe that, you got to go up and get him. Because the one thing I worry about with this draft is, unfortunately for the Jets, what has happened is you have a couple teams that need offensive line in front of you. I think you could see a situation where Falcons can maybe look offensive line. The Eagles, it depends. The Eagles' offensive line is starting to get a little long in the tooth. They have that pick from the Saints at 10. Do they try to reinvest in the offensive line? Titans, do they cut Jack Conklin? Do they look to invest in the offensive line there? And look, the Texans also, they could double down. If they don't trade out of 2 or 12, I think what they'll do is take the quarterback at 2 and then take an offensive lineman at 12. And the other thing you have to keep an eye on too is the whole Laramie Tunsil situation, because Tunsil, I think they're going to try to move. Like if they can get a franchise tackle in the first round of the draft and trade Tunsil to get more assets, I think that's another possibility too. And look, if that happens too, if I'm the Jets and they could get Laramie Tunsil, I wouldn't also rule that out too. I think Tunsil is a good left tackle, not elite, but a solid left tackle. It's going to be 29 next year. Now, the cap hits high. It's going to be 18. Now, can you renegotiate or lock him up to a long-term deal, like a 3 or 4 year extension at left tackle? I would have to get that ironed out. But if I could trade my second round pick for Tunsil and then have that first round pick to maybe address another issue or use that to get more picks later on, I think every option has to be on the table for this team. Well, they only have one, but could I see them basically moving up? So the Jets draft picks this year, as I saw this comment too, I could see them moving up from 2 into the bottom of the first round, but that will also be pretty expensive because the Jets have the 43rd pick in the second round. So to get to, let's say, because don't forget the Dolphins lost their pick, so the first round's 31 picks. So the Bears have the Steelers, because of the Steelers have 32 because of the trade for the wide receiver. So they have 32. So if the Jets want to get to, let's say, 32, they would have to move up there. So right now the Jets have a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. They had 2 6th round picks, but don't forget the James Robinson deal. They held them out, so the fifth doesn't become a pick. So they basically have a full slate except the 7th rounder. So they have 6 picks coming into the draft. The big question is, though, can they move some players on this roster for other picks? I believe that they could. I would not be surprised if the Jets get an extra draft pick or 2 before draft night. Douglas loves the picks, and there's a couple players on this roster that I think you could be traded, and I'll make sure to mention those in future episodes. So I will make sure to address those, but those are a couple of positions that I could see. So, like, if I was to just look to, like, I'm just trying to check on something really quick because I do have this somewhere on my. There we go. So I'm looking at the trade value chart. So I'm just looking at where the Jets are picking. So I'm just trying to see. So just to get up to 32, which would be the top of the second round, that pick is valued at 590 points. So the Jets are valued at 460. Usually it's not a perfect swap, but you'd have to go a little bit more. So to go up to 32 would be a difference right now of 130 points. So to give you an idea, the top 4th round pick is worth like 90 points. So if the Jets wanted to go up, they would probably have to go a second, a third. A possibility could be, like, let's say the Jets give up their second and their third. That gets them to 670 to Houston. What they probably would then have is a 5th rounder thrown in or a day 3 pick. So the Jets could trade both of their day 2 picks to get up there. To get back in the first round would be even more tricky. So, like, let's say they wanted to get up to like pick 26, which is a value of 700. The Jets' second round pick is at 460. So to get up there, they would have to give up definitely the 3rd and probably even another day 3 pick to go up there. So I would think the Jets also look to add some draft picks in there as well. So hopefully that helps audition with the amount of draft picks that I mentioned. I seem taking the best play off ball linebacker in Simpson or Jordan. Is this with 13? Is that, just let me know, Dave, the dude, that's with 13. I would trade with Tunsil. I agree he's not elite, but security and production, there's a playoff mandate, so expect a splash from Joe Douglas, nothing big. Look, and if it looks like Tunsil wants out, if I could swing it, it might even cost you a second round pick. If it costs you a 3 and a 5, I'd do it. I know, because again, you'd have to pay him, and that's one of the reasons Jets could argue that they're not going to give you an elite package, because they want to get an extension done, and they're going to have to take on that contract and also take on, an extension with the Texans. I mean, he's basically on a 1-year deal with the Texans. So I think that would be a good move. You get your left tackle, and then you can play around. Like if you give up a 30 and a 5, for example, you could maybe trade back and get a first and maybe a fourth by propelling back a couple spots. And look, Douglas is aggressive on the trade market. What do the Bears get at 1? Trade Fields, you get a haul for the picks. Look, if I'm them, I'd get a haul of picks because that roster's terrible. And the thing, too, is Fields, I don't think would get you nearly as much. Here's the thing. If you feel that there is a quarterback that is significantly better than Justin Fields, then you got to take the quarterback because it restarts the rookie clock. But that's, again, if you feel like CJ Stroud is a much better quarterback than Justin Fields will be, or in 3 or 4 years, who will be the better quarterback? But then the problem you run into is then, okay, you have to trade your quarterback. I don't know if you're going to get a first-round pick back. I know he's got the rushing, but teams are going to look and say, well, the completion percentage is terrible. The Bears were last in passing. I mean, we complain about Zach Wilson's stats. I mean, there was a game where he was 7 of 21. 7 of 21. I get he's a great runner. I get he's a great athlete. But teams are going to say, well, why should we give up this pick for someone that's last in passing, has had injury issues? It depends. Like if they believe in Fields, go for it. If they don't, it's fascinating what they do. If they bring Carr, I don't think they would have the ammo for Tunsil unless future first. The thing too is Carr could be a free agent. The Jets could trade before the Raiders cut him. If that's the case, I think they use the first round pick on the offensive lineman. But if he's cut, then it's just money. So I would see what that has to do. I would definitely take Tunsil with Becton and right tackle Mitchell and Brown as the backups. Yeah, I think that'd be a really good offensive line. And you have AVT, Tomlinson, and McGovern on the inside. This draft is not great, and Addison is a stud. Simpson, they're talking about the wide receiver. Simpson is the best linebacker in the draft. So unless you want a QB at 13th, they don't get the player, trade back and get more picks. So Dave the Dude, my biggest thing with this draft is there's a lot of people are going to poo-poo it, but so I'm just trying to read your comment here just to see. I know Addison's the best receiver, but the Jets already have receivers. You already drafted one in the top 10 last year. I mean, there's other positions on this team. Linebackers in the first round, I think Simpson is a great talent. But the problem I run into is you got to look at the availability. Am I more likely to find a B plus linebacker on day 2 or day 3 of the draft than I am a wide receiver, an offensive tackle, or quarterback? Absolutely. I mean, you can get a guy whoever you like a Chad Muma, for example, in last year's draft on day 3. A lot of it comes down to picking positions. And if you notice, Joe Douglas has a pattern. And I think it fits to my way of thinking in the draft, which is what are the premium positions that are available in rounds 1 through 2 that aren't available in rounds 3 through 7? Premium offensive playmakers and trench play. And if you look, and quarterback. And if you look, that's what Joe Douglas has drafted in his time with the Jets. You look at Joe Douglas's drafts on day 3, what are they primarily? Defense, players that have fallen in the draft that were undervalued, but mostly defense. Like if I was to look back at the Jets draft history, which I will bring up momentarily, they have a tendency to basically go that route. So look at last year. Day 3, they get Max Mitchell as a tackle that they really like and fell down, and Michael Clemens. But they also got them at the very beginning of day 3, so rounds 4, where you see guys from day 2 fall to day 3, that's where they got those guys. But let's look at the other years that Douglas has done the draft, which is basically 2021 and 2022. I mean, 2020, sorry. So you look at day 3, Michael Carter, the running back, high in the 4th round, try to get the best player that fell out of day 2. But then they go Jamin Sherwood, Michael Carter, Jason Pittock, Hamza Nasruddin, Brandon Eccles, Jonathan Marshall, all defense. 2020, after they get Ashton Davis, Jabari Zuniga, P. Ryan, Morgan, Clark, Bryce Hall, and Braden Mann. They tend to look for like defense on those days of the draft, and their priority free agent signings are on the defensive side. And again, it also depends on the free agency period. I think that's the reason I don't do full 7-round mock drafts until after free agency, because you really use the later round picks to fill out the holes you weren't able to get in free agency. So I do 3-round mock drafts because, again, 3 rounds, they're guys you want to contribute and make a big impact. Day 3, you're hoping for really good role players, and you're hoping somewhere in there you might be able to find a starter or two. But that's usually 4th round. Once you get into the 5th round, you're kind of just looking for, okay, can they be a backup? Can they be a role player? Or are they a developmental player that we can have in our system down the road? But again, guys, thanks so much for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. We will be back with more Jets content. So again, go to our channel on the community page. Go and vote. What video do you want to see this week? We have 4 options for you. 3-round mock draft, here gone in 2023, top 5 cap casualties, and top 5 trade candidates. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our Jets offseason content. Give us a like, get us in that algorithm so we can try to get more Jets fans, of course, here on this team. But look, the staff is intact. Joe Douglas has spoken about the Jets' current situation. There's going to be a lot to cover this offseason. Make sure you stay with us for the entire ride this whole offseason, only here on Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.